So today we'll be looking at how to administer Azure Storage. So that's storage accounts. So in the learning objective, we're going to be talking about how to configure storage accounts. Then we'll look at the blob storage, which is one of the storage type that we have. You guys should remember that during the course of that fundamental class, we talked about different types or different kinds of storage account that you can have, where we talked about the blob, we talked about the queue, the table, and the file. So yeah, we'll look at the blob storage, which is the most common, storage type. It is used for storing unstructured data. Then we'll talk about the storage security. We'll round it up with the Azure files. So let's start with the configure storage account. Under this learning objective, we're going to be exploring the different Azure storage services that we have. Like I've said, we're going to talk about the storage account type, the replication strategies, the how to access storage, and some of the secure storage endpoints. Then I'll configure, based on the demonstration that we have, a storage account. I'm sure all these things under these learning objectives have been discussed during the fundamental class. You guys will see as we go on. So here, these are the different storage services that we have in Azure. Like I was saying the other time, I said we have the blob, we have the table, we have the queue, and we have the file. The blob stores unstructured data, and the unstructured data includes the images, text message, videos, So we use the blob storage to store those kind of data. So Azure Container, like you can see here, scalable object that stores, text and binary data. Then we look at the table which is used for storing structured non-relational data. So when we talk about the non-relational data, we are talking about, the database in this regard, So Azure tables come into play when it comes to storing structured and non-relational data. Then we look at the queue. I explained that let's say you have two applications that needs to, talk to each other, and there is a need for us to have like a storage where we can store the messages between these two components. Now we have what we call the queue, and this queue is used for storing messages between two application components or multiple application components. Then the last one will be the files, where you want to share files between the resources on your on-premises and the cloud, or just your cloud resources. So let's say you created a virtual machine in the cloud, and you have your on-premises machine also, and you want to do a file sync between both of them, so you can take advantage of the Azure file. So from here, you can see this just explains, the different storage services that we have, where we talk about the blob, the table, the queue, and the files. And this is, explains what are some of the things they store. So like I've said, the blob storage is used for storing non-structured data, which includes images, documents, videos, and the likes. The structured data, like what we have in the database, yes, these are structured data that includes, okay, yes, we want to get the data or property of a particular student or of a particular person. Then at that time, we'll be looking at what's the name of the person, what's the email that the person used in signing in, do we have a photo ID, what's the NIN number, the date, all those. So when you log into the JAM portal that you want to check your result, you log in with your username and password, and you are presented with a structured data, structured data in the sense that your name, the center where you actually, sat for your exam, what course or what subject did you, took during the course of the examination, and what are the results of those subjects after after writing them. So these are structured data. These are things the table stores, and that's why when we talk about tables, we are talking about the database. Then we have the queue, which stores messages. You can see image to download, image to resize. If there are two applications or multiple applications communicating with each other, and we want to store information that needs to be retrieved by this application, we can use the queue to store those messages. Then the last one is the Azure file. Do you want to create a folder, like a directory, store your test message, store your test file, executable file like exe or any other file. So that's the storage services that we have. This explains the kind of storage account that we have. And we talked about the services now. Now let's talk about the kind. The different kind, we have the standard general purpose. This kind, when you're setting up your storage account in Azure, you are going to start seeing, you get the option to select the kind of storage account you want. Maybe it's just a general standard or standard general purpose, which includes these ones we've talked about: the blob, the file, the queue, the table, or even the data lake storage. Then we have the premium block, the premium blob, which is just like the blob, or let's say it's the blob or the premium version of blob. So it comes with high transaction rates. Let's say you want to start retrieving. So let's put into consideration, or let's say let's have this example. Netflix, actually, their business is centered around videos, and Netflix is actually taking advantage of cloud computing. However, they are using AWS. Let's say Netflix is using Azure. This is what they will be using to store all their videos. They will be using the premium blobs, just because of the rate of high transaction, between when a user is trying to get the video. You want to make sure that speed is actually in place when it comes to this kind of thing. Then we talked about the file share, just the same way we have the file share, but we have the premium file share. And these are actually centered or focused on enterprise application or high performance file share applications. So there is no need for you to actually select any of this premium if the general purpose can actually do what you want. However, there are limitations when it comes to using the standard general purpose as against using the premium, file share, the premium blob, or the premium page blob. So depending on your scenario, you want to select the kind of storage account you want to use. Then we talk about the replication strategies during the fundamental class, where we explain, the local redundancy strategy. We are still within just one region. However, it might be, replicated within a different data center, but still within, one region. Then here you talk about the zone redundancy strategy, where you have 3 replicas within 3 zones. That means instead of, like the LRS, where we can have, let's say, within the Southwest region in Nigeria, we want to have one, the data replicated to maybe Oyo, Ogun, Ibadan. We don't care where this data is replicated to, even if it's just going to be within a particular zone. But when we have the zone redundancy, we are more particular about the fact that we do not want to put all, the data replication within just one particular zone. We are looking at spreading it within different zones. So we have 3 zones here. Let's say we have one in the southwest, one in the southwest region, still within just one data center, then one within the southeast. So, but the focus is we do not want everything within one particular region, one particular zone, the same way it is in the LRS. So we have, everything still within a particular region. Then we'll talk about, the geo redundancy strategy, where we have 6 replicas, 2 regions, 3 per region. So we don't care, about where this is being replicated to within that particular region. What we want is, at least we want to have um, our data replicated within 2 regions, and within each of these regions, we want to have 3 replica of our data. So you can see what's going on. We discussed that, I actually explained that the region pair is 2 regions that are 300 miles away, and so you can see they're taking advantage of what we call, the region pair, where we have one region being active and the other one being passive. However, these files are actually replicated asynchronously to the secondary region. If at some point there is an issue with this primary region, then this secondary region will turn to active, while this one will go back to passive. Then we have, we have, so you notice something here, even so we have asynchronous copy to the secondary, protect against major regional disaster. Now, here we have the read access. This is read access, geo redundancy option. And the meaning is just the same way we have it in, the geo redundancy option. The only thing is we still have, a read access on the secondary region. So the fact that this is active, this one is always also active. So people can actually, you can see data is being still read. You can still read this data even without this one being in the active state, so that at least everything that is being pushed here, we can actually see, that yes, this is what's actually going on here. So the same way we have it here, where we have 6 replica, 2 region. The only thing is we have a read access to the secondary region. So we can actually see what's actually in the secondary region, not like this one where data are just being pushed. We don't even know what is in there. So we have read access to the secondary region. Then the geozone redundancy strategy, where we have 6 replicas, just the same way we have in the other 2. The only thing is we have, 3. We have it in 2 regions. Yeah, we have these 3 zones and one additional, data center in another region. So here you can see multiple regions 300 miles away, protection against the. So here, what's going on here is we still have the same thing, but the only thing is we are more concerned about, the zones there. We want to make sure that our data are being replicated across a particular zone and not just within different data centers. We are more concerned about the fact that yes, we want it replicated in different zones. Then the same thing here, still asynchronous. We have read-only access to the secondary region, and we still have the data, spread across different zones, and that's what we have here. So we discussed. I explained that for each storage account that you create, storage account must have a unique name when you are creating a storage account. And one of the reasons why your storage account must have a unique name is because each storage account comes with a URL address. So if I create Babafemi as the name of my storage account in my tenant, you guys are not going to be able to use the same name because storage accounts must be globally unique, because at the end of the day, when you want to access your storage account, it comes with a URL. So if I create a blob or a container storage account type, then it's going to be babafemi.blob.core.windows.net. So at least two storage accounts cannot have the same URL. And that's why, the name of your storage account must be globally unique. So the kind of service you are creating now, that's the kind of URL that you get. So you can see if I create a container service, I'm going to get the blob.core. If I create a table service, I'm going to get the table.core. Same thing goes with the queue and the file. So this is just, an example of, a storage account that has been created with the name Contoso Blobs. So the URL is going to be, contosoblob.blob.core.windows.net. So now let's take, for instance, we are trying to, send this out. How many people will remember contosoblob.blob.core.windows.net? So with that now, you can take advantage of the custom domain. So when we say custom domain, you can create, instead of having all these long domain .blob.core whatsoever .core.windows.net, you can verify your custom domain on your storage account so that you can replace the .blob.core.windows.net with just contoso.com. So if I create a storage account in my organization, and I verify my organization domain, which is the it360ng.com, then the next time I'm creating a storage account, I can have it as maybe babafemi.it360ng.com, and that will be the link to my storage account, which is at least reasonable compared to having this long domain name attached to your storage account. So here, this is talking about how do we now secure your storage account. So we'll talk about the storage account secured endpoint. So one of the way is to have a firewall in your tenant to secure your storage account. So when you have a firewall, so firewalls, just we talked about the subnet where you can create rules to prevent or to allow or deny incoming traffic or outgoing traffic within the resources that has been or on the resources within your particular network that you have put or that you have deployed within a particular subnet, because you apply NSG, which is the network security group, on the subnet, and that is actually a firewall, or let's say a mini firewall for your network. So the same way you have that, which is the combination of rules of outgoing and incoming rules, that's the same thing the firewall is doing. So the firewall is a combination of the outgoing and incoming rules, that are set to filter out traffic going out of your resource, your network, or coming into the network. So you use what we call the firewalls, and that's what the firewalls do. So you can see firewalls here. You can change the network access on your storage account. Do you want to allow traffic from all network? And that's what has been selected there. Or you just want to allow it from selected virtual network. So in this case, if you select this, I think we'll still when we get to the demonstration time, we can take a look at this. So here, when you select this particular option, that means you need to add the virtual network IP address or IP address space that can access that particular storage. So, like you guys have created, some of you have created your virtual machine. So you can, when you pick this, you can add that particular IP address of that virtual machine on the storage account. That means that machine will have access to the storage account and not any other resource. So you can decide to add a full network address to to this if you want to. That means not everyone can access that storage account except the ones that have their IP address or IP address space added on that storage account. Or you even want to disable, access entirely to that storage account, then you want to select, the disabled. So yeah, it's just talking about, the firewalls and the virtual network, how to restrict access to the storage account. Then we have, subnets. If you add an NSG to the subnet also, so when you deploy, whatever resources you deploy within your subnet, you can still restrict access to that particular resource based on the NSG that has been added to, that particular resource. So let's take a look at how to create a storage account. I'm sure almost everyone here knows how to create a storage account, but I'm just going to complete that. Push this. If you have any question at any point in time, please let me know. Hotel dots. So for me to create a storage account, you all know I can go to the create a resource and do all those settings, but I just want to, go to this shortcut. Then I just type in whatever resource I want to create, and that takes me to, yeah. So let me divide this screen into two for now. Okay, let me take it back, please. I do not want to mess up with what I'm sharing, but you guys can actually see. So for me to create a storage account, I select the subscription, the resource group, then the name of the storage account. Like I said, I think I don't know if, okay, it should have been discarded. Yeah. So that's the problem. The BB also should be taken. Okay, that's not taken now. So I will go back and delete that storage account. So because when I was creating, I think when I was doing the testing, um, the fundamental labs, so I've selected the Babafemi B, and that's why I'm not able to create. Like I said, you have to be globally unique. So the region, this was the ones we talked about where you want to select the standard or the premium. So you can see when you select the premium, you can now select which of the premium you want to select, or you want to go with the standard where you have this option to select different replication strategies. But I think when you select the standard, you have more options. Okay, I think you have less options. It's just the locally redundancy and the redundance, the zone redundance. Okay, let's go with the standard. I'm going to leave it as default, the locally redundant storage option. Oh, okay. Before I go to create, let's look at the networking part that we talked about. So you guys can see now I'm giving access to everyone from the internet, and that's why I've enabled the public access. if you want to select maybe some of the selected network or IPs, then you want to go ahead with these. Yeah, I'm not sure anything. Is this one just talking about the access tier? We talked about the access tier, but I think we'll still talk about the access tier under this particular module. So that's how just look at some of these things, and I'll say explain this one. So never mind. So let me just create it. At least let's have it, and let's look at some of the overview or some of the properties on the overview page. So let's hold on. This shouldn't take more than 1 minute. Okay, so why this is creating? Okay, let me just wait. Let me just hold on.
Please, can you help us to widen your page so that we'll be able to see the letterings very well?
Cannot see it well. Are
Yeah,
you
it's tiny.
connecting from your phone?
No, laptop. But can you help us to widen it so that we won't be able to see very well? Still tiny.
Still tiny. It will be too big
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. Is that okay for you?
It will be too big for me.
Okay, I think it's better to see.
All right. So in the storage account, this is just the overview. Depending on whatever we've configured the storage account with, so you can see the resource group, the location, the subscription, ID, the kind of storage account I've selected, which is the general purpose, what's the replication strategy I've selected. And so here under the networking is what I wanted to show you guys. So if you go to networking, you're going to see this. So if I decide to, change this from all network to selected network, I need to now start adding IP address, like just my IP address. So if I do that, that means, only my system will be able to access this particular storage account. Yes. So I can add an existing virtual network from here, but this side is just for me to. So if I pick any of this virtual network that we've created, instead of me adding, so you can select, maybe you want to select all the subnet or you want to restrict it to a particular subnet, so you can have that enabled. Okay, that's fine. Should be good now. So yeah, that means all the resources within this particular virtual network will be able to access these, storage accounts. So if I disable these, none of them will be able to. If I enable these, that means I do not need to select the particular network that wants to access this particular storage account. All the network, everyone from the internet can actually access. So that's the part. All right. So let's right with what we have. If you have any question at any point in time, please do let me know. The blob storage, and under the blob storage, we'll look at how to actually implement blob storage, how to create blob containers. Then we'll look at the access tiers under the blob storage. Then what is the lifecycle management rules? Then we'll determine blob storage object replication. Then we can do a demonstration on how to configure Azure Blob Storage. So when we talk about the blob storage, I explained that blob storage are used to store unstructured data, and some of the unstructured data are the images, text messages, the pictures, videos, you know, those are some of the unstructured data that we use blob storage for. So this this just explaining that the type of data this blob storage stores can be text message or binary data, and it's also referred to as object storage. So common uses is what you have here. They are used in storing images, documents, videos, audios, used for backup disaster, uh, just as against the structured data that will explain that, when you want to retrieve your information or you want to retrieve an information about a particular person, those data are structured, especially the ones saved in your database where you get, information about this particular person or this particular, you know, um, animals, anything you're looking at. So those ones are structured data and they are stored inside the database. As against this one, they don't come in a particular format. It's just there, and that's why they are unstructured. So now, for us to be able to, create a storage account, your a blob, all your blob must be inside the container. So you can have multiple blobs. So when you create just one container, then you can have multiple blob, or within your container, you can have multiple blob storage. Then and that's what this is saying. Accounts can have unlimited containers, the same way you can have unlimited blob under each of the container. Then depending on the access level that you selected, you can restrict access to the entire container based on the level you've selected. One of the lab in the Azure fundamental course is, restricting access to our blob container. And, I think I actually did that lab where at first we selected private, known, anonymous. So if we select this and you create any blob storage within that container, you will not be able to access that particular container using the URL. But this one, we have read-only access, then, to just the blob, to each of the blob, and we can have that change, to the container where we have read-only access to all the blobs that are being created within that particular container. So we'll still take a look at this. I think it's part of, like I said, it's part of the lab that I've actually worked on, and all those labs should be released this coming week. So this is just talking about the storage account tier. It doesn't relate only to the blob storage. Even when you're working with the other storage account service, you still get to see, this access tier um, on the other storage service. So we have different access tier where we talked about the auth, depending on how frequent you access your data. If you have a structured data that you stored in your Azure table, let's say in your database, that means there will be an application that is connected to that database, and that application needs the information within that database. Let's say, your Jamb environment or your Jamb website, almost every day people check, their results, even the ones that have done their examination like 12, 13 years ago, because some of them need that information. It might be for verification, it might be for something. So the fact that they access that particular website every day, Jamb is left with no option than having that storage account set to auth tier, because it's being accessed like almost every day. So when data is being accessed frequently, or modified frequently, then we need the auth tier when we are setting up the access tier. So the cool is we don't have frequent access to that particular data. So we can at least we access that data maybe once in 30 days, then we can set it up to, to the cool access. The code is infrequent access also, just like the cool, but at least we access maybe once in 90 days or within 90 days. Then. And archive is maybe this might be the best when you want to do your backup. You do not really have the need for that data. So you access those data, that has been stored there maybe once in 180 days. Then you want to take advantage of the archive. So depending on the access state that you've selected, it adds to the cost of the resource, also the cost of the storage account, because a storage account that you have access every day, will be costlier than the archive. But the good thing is you can change the access at any point in time. And that's what has been, explained here, that optimize storage costs by placing your data in a more appropriate access tier. So this is just talking about, the lifecycle management rules, where you can actually move your blob from maybe a more cooler tier to an high performance tier, and this have as a big effect on performance and cost, because for us for an all tier storage account, like I said, it's been accessed every day, so the performance is better than the archive, but it's costlier than the archive. So, and that's what this guy is saying here. So you can delete blob at the end of the life cycle. If you do not need them again, you can actually delete them at the end of the life cycle. So you can actually set this up using the lifecycle management rules to say, at this particular time, if this data is not accessed, within this particular time, please move it to the cool storage, or if it's not accessed within this period, please delete this particular blob. We don't need it again. So that's what we use the lifecycle management rule, to achieve. So this is just talking about the replication strategy. How do we replicate our blob storage or blob objects, within regions, within data centers? So you can have it, in one in one region, and have it replicated asynchronously to another region. That means here, as the source account is always up and running and set to active. So in case it's the same thing that is being replicated here. So in case when we say asynchronous, so we are not doing it in a two-way, it's just from the first region to the second region. So yeah, in case there's a downtime at any point on this region, then we can have this up and running. So this is just asynchronous to other region. It minimizes latency, optimizes cost and the likes. And that's the replication strategy for your blob objects. Okay, so let's take a look at how to configure or create our container. So if I go back to the storage account I've created, now you can see that we have containers here. So I can create container. So let's say first. So depending on what level of access that you want to give here. Okay, I'm looking at why. Okay, I think that is set by default, but I should be able to at least set my. Why am I not even able to? because anonymous access is disabled on the storage account. Okay. That's it. So where he starts, let me check the configuration. Okay, so allow Blob anonymous access. So is disabled by default. So if I change this, and though even without changing it here, you can still change on each of the container, but I want it to, at least I want to select it while creating my container. That's no effect yet. Let me reload this because I changed the settings already. So I should have access to change that. Yeah. So if I create a new one, say second, then I can actually select, maybe this is the one I want to go with. This is the container I want to go with. So that's it. So for now, yeah, I'm going to create this one with the blob access. So that means within this guy, any blob that I create, any object I update here, I will be able to see the object. So let's take, for instance, let me see, do I have any objects here? I'm going to show you something. All right, so if I upload this guy here, okay, then the same image, I'm going to upload the same image in the first blob. You guys should see what's going to happen. Then I will drag the same image here. So I'll upload this guy. Now, for you to be able to access this particular blob that I've just uploaded, so I will click on this, copy the blob URL, which you can see. You're going to see, just like we've explained, you can see I have it as babafemib.blob.core, .windows.net. Then this is the file I've uploaded. So if I do this, I won't have access. Let's go back to the second one I've uploaded, which is the second container, which I've given access to on the blob. If I copy this out, so you can see the type is the block, and I paste this, and you can see, I have access. So depending on, the access that you've actually set on your container. So you can go ahead on this container. I can change on the first container. I can change the access also. Why am I? Yes. So on this container, you can see the private. I can go in here, and yeah, I can change the access to, the blob. Click OK. This is done. Go back there, set this, and you're good. So that's how, set this. So that's how we manage, or create, configure, and manage blob in the container. All right. So the last part for today, we're going to be talking about the storage security. And we've talked about this. We talked about the fact that you can have firewalls, or you can have, yes, maybe some just within the firewalls, you can have some selected endpoint or selected virtual network access that storage account only. So what are some other ways that we can actually, secure our storage accounts? So here we are going to talk about what we call the shared access signature, which is the SAS. We are going to, so that SAS, it gives you, instead of giving access to your full container, you can give access to just particular URL, like the one, I pasted in the tab, just that particular one. So the user will only have access to that particular URL and nothing again within that container or within the storage account. Then we'll talk about how to identify URL and SAS parameters. Then we demonstrate the storage security. We look at storage service encryption. We look at what we call customer managed keys. So do we even at any point have we even thought about the fact that we're storing data in the data center? What if someone have access to those data and sell it out to my competitor, you know? And that's why all the data that is being stored within the data center are actually encrypted data. Even the guys working in the data center will not be able to have access to those data because those files, those folders are actually encrypted. And how do we encrypt it? We take advantage of the managed key. So we have what we call the Microsoft managed key, which Microsoft is saying, yes, we are using a key to protect it. But the customers can come and to say, no, we do not want your key. We don't trust you. We'll bring our own key, and that key is what we refer to as the customer managed key. Then we look at, the storage security best practices. Let's take a look at these. So these are things we need to look at. So this is just telling you what are some of the security strategies that we have in place when it comes to securing storage accounts. The first one is the service encryption, which I just talked about, using your own key. Then we look at how do you use RBAC to restrict access to your storage account. And there we'll be talking about permissions, the roles, on the IAM. And so you can see that Entra ID is very, very important. The RBAC is very, very important. And that's why, you know, you can always have a job just for managing Entra ID, and permissions. Then we look at, client-side encryption, where we talk about how do we secure our data that is actually in rest or in transit. So we look at that. Disk encryption, shared access signature, which I talked about, the SAS. You only want to give access to a particular URL and not the entire container. The encrypted key still goes with the shared key. If you want to give access on this shared signature, you can create what we call the shared key. And even when you have access to the link and you don't have access to the shared key, you still be not be able to access that particular file. Then the last one is the one we just demonstrated, where you want to check the access to your container or the access to the blob itself. So how do we create a shared access signature? So like I said, this is delegated access only to a particular resource, a particular file, like the file I used as an example the other time. So you are saying, okay, this is the permission, only read permission, and not everyone can, or not, you cannot access it at every point in time. I only want it to, I want access to it within this particular time, from this date to this date, just that same day. Do you want to allow some particular IP address or machine or some particular virtual network? You can do that from here. and what protocol do you want to allow. I do not want access on HTTP because HTTP is not secure. Rather, I want it to be accessed on HTTPS. So when you set that up, you generate what we call the SaaS token and the URL. So the URL, then if you have, like I said, if you have only the URL, you will still not be able to access it. So you need what we call the SaaS token, and it comes with, when you set up what we call the shared access signature. So this is what you copy the SaaS token and the URL and send it to whoever want to access that particular file or that particular resource. So we have the SaaS. So it's a signed URL that points to a particular, or one or more storage resource, or you want to just, have just a particular file, a particular resource. And what does it consist? It consists of the URL, which is, the link to that particular resource, like I showed you the other time, and the token that we use in accessing it. So this is the link, and this is what we call the token. The token gives you, access. So let me explain what the token is. So when you type in your username and password, now that means you have permission to access that particular website. The token is what is generated after you have put in your username and password, and that is what gives you access to that particular website. So there's a way we can get the token instead of signing in with our username and password every time. So if you have a token, so I'm sure one of the things you guys will have heard is never use the Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, maybe on the train or something, or in a cafe, because there can be what we call a token hijacking. Here you can see we have the URL, and these are some of the things you can set on the SaaS. The parameter, the time, expiring time, what resource, what permission, what IP can access, and the likes. Now, this is just talking about the encryption. Um, how do we encrypt those files? Like I've said, your files are automatically encrypted and decrypted. When you want to access it, they are decrypted for you. So you have access to, the raw file. But when they are stored, when they are pushed to the data center, they are encrypted automatically. And how do we encrypt it? Microsoft has what we call the Microsoft Managed Key, which is used to encrypt this data so that even people working in the data center will not have access to this data. But some customers say, no, we don't trust that key. We want to bring our own key. And that's what we call the customer managed key. And here, this is what we call the bring your own key. So you can bring your own key. So by default, data in storage account is encrypted using the Microsoft managed key. You can choose to bring your own key. And when you say bring your own key, we are talking about the customer managed key. All right. So this is just telling you, let's even say you are bringing your own key. You have a customer managed key. How do we integrate this key? We have this resource or this service that we call Key Vault, and that's where we store, our secret. So when you bring your own key, you are going to be storing it inside the Key Vault. And this is just talking about the best practices when it comes to storage security. So we've talked about how do we restrict access to your storage accounts, maybe using the SaaS, using the IAM, maybe using the encryption keys. But this is just telling you some of the best practices. Don't assume SaaS is always the correct choice. Because you've created a SaaS URL and a token, doesn't mean that's the best way, to restrict access, unauthorized access to your storage account. Be careful of the start time. If your start time is actually behind, then you will not be able to generate your SaaS URL and token. So understand that your account will be built for any usage. Yes. So when you create a storage account, you are not built. But when you start using it, that is when you are build, then be specific with resources to be accessed. So this is just explaining, or this just explains what are some of the best practices when it comes to storage security. And that brings us to really the last one. Let's talk about the last one, then we can do the demonstration of the SaaS and the files. So the last part here talks about the Azure files. So here we'll be talking about how do we compare files to Blob, how do we manage this file share, how do we create a snapshot of our file share, then what are some of the tools that we use in managing the files, where we'll talk about the storage explorer and some other tools. So how do we compare our files to our Blob? So we said that files, blobs are used in storing unstructured data, but Azure files, you can use it to store files that you give access to from anywhere, lift and shift. Let's say you want to sync your on-premises file with your virtual machine file, you can use that. That's not used in supporting or application files. So no, they're not used. So they're used. Let's say you want to lift and shift an application. When we say lift and shift an application, like I said, your applications, it's not as if applications are installed on the server and you go there to access that installed application. No, those applications we are accessing, those websites we are accessing, they are just files and folders. And so when I create a file, I store it in my system. Then I give access to that particular, folder. And that's just the application. It's not like the normal application that we install on our phone, install on our system. No, they are just files and folders. So you can use this Azure file share to, lift and shift those. When we say lift and shift, so to transfer that or migrate those applications from one machine to another. So they are used to store, development and debugging tools that need to be accessed from many virtual machines. So that's why we say it's file sync. So let's say we have multiple virtual machine, like 200 virtual machine. We can mount, we'll mount a folder to all those machine. We have mounted, let's say, an hard disk or a directory where all those machines can find. Just the same way we have our servers on non-premises where you can have a particular folder mounted on your system. It's saved on your system. Anytime you want to access the folder, you don't need to start going to C drive, then going to user, then going to the directory. Yes, you can just from there click on that folder and it will take you to that location. So that will say we are mounting that particular folder. So that's the way we do a file sync, so you can access it from anywhere. So yeah, we take advantage of the Azure files when it comes to that. So this is just talking about some of the things I've said. Do you want to mount a drive on the Linux environment? You want to do that on your Mac OS, on Windows. If you want to do that, you need to ensure that the SMB port, which is the protocol that is used for doing your file share, is open. So that's the port 445. So this was something I was talking about, that when you want to mount, your particular drive, you will see it on your system. The same way on our system, you can see drive C. So when we install an hard disk or an SSD into our system, they need to now mount it before we can use it. And that's why you can see the C drive on your system. So if you buy another hard drive now and add it to what you have, you will not see it immediately. It's not automated. It will not come up immediately. So you need to do your mounting before you can see it. So that's what we use, and that's why. So all these C drive that you can see, that's coming from the file share at the Azure file. So this is just talking about, when you have a file share in Azure, you can take a snapshot. And when we say a snapshot, you can take a backup of it, in case you there is corruption, data corruption, application error, and you want to, or general backup purpose, and you want to, um, get those files back. So from that snapshot, from that backup you've done, that can go there, and based on the time you've done your snapshot, that's when you'll be able to take, those files from. And this just explain demonstration on how to create our file share. And so these are some of the tools that we use. Like I said, you can take advantage of these tools. You want to use the Storage Explorer. This is going to be the same way you have your File Explorer on your system, where you go in there when you want to access any file, when you want to access any folder, you click on the Folder Explorer, on the folders on the system, and then from there you can navigate. So you can have the same installed on your system, and you can navigate through the files and folders you've stored in your storage account, in your virtual machine, within or on your local system. So you can do that. So by installing your Azure Storage Explorer and connecting it on your system. And we can have the import and export service also. You want to import anything into Azure, if you want to export anything from Azure. Then if you want to take advantage of the CLI, so you can use what we call the easy copy, to copy file from one source to another destination. This is optional. Okay, let's take advantage of this. Is just talking about some of the labs. So let me just go back to what I've created here, and just the same way we have, the storage accounts. So let's start with the SaaS that we talked about. This is where you have the SaaS. Now under here, you can create. Let's hold on for these. Yeah, this gives you, um on here. Do you allow SaaS on the Blob, or what do you want to do? If I want to have it on the Blob only, I will uncheck these guys. If it's just the container, I can check these guys only. What permission do I want to give? At what time to what time do I want to give access to? It might be the old storage account. If I do this, it's going to be the old storage account. But if you want to restrict it to a particular service, you can do that from here. What permission, and that comes with, as you can see, it comes with. So if I check this on the container, you can see immediately I check this, I will be able to generate a SaaS connection string. And if I do this, this is going to give me, you can see a connection string to access the Blob. This is going to be the Blob's SaaS URL, the file SaaS URL, the queue SaaS URL, because I've checked all these guys. So if I take off all these guys, I will only be able to, assign or create a SaaS key or an URL for that particular service. And you do not want to do this, there is no point. If you are allowing all this, then why are you even creating, a SaaS? So, but it might be because of the fact that you want to restrict the time when that particular storage account will be accessed, or from which particular IP should that storage account be accessed. So that's one of the reasons you want to, take advantage of or create a um, SaaS URL and SaaS token. The encryption, this is, we talked about the fact that do you all information, all files, all folders that you store in your storage account are encrypted automatically by default, using the Microsoft managed key. But let's say you want to use your own key, then you need to now add, a key vault to be able to, use your own key. So the file share now. Okay, let's even go to the file share. So this is where you set up your file share. I can't hear you.
Yeah, please, I just want to ask, this SaaS you are referring to, SaaS URL, is it the same SaaS, like SaaS, the software as a service?
No. This one is not software as a service. Shared access signature is not. This one is shared access
Okay,
signature,
okay.
not software as a service. This is within our software. This is not another cloud service on its own. So this is it. Where is it? So the shared access signature, yeah. So you can create your file share here, just the same way you've created your your container. Do you want to take advantage of the backup, or you want to, how do you want to access this? Is it alt? Is it is it alt? Is it cool? Is it premium? What do you want to use this for? That's the same way you create, same thing as the queue, same thing as the table, the same way we've created, and we've given access on our container, and that's the same way these guys work also. Yeah, I think that's completes what we have for today.